student do a speech about CTE, and he showed this athlete who had passed away donated his brain to science, and they were showing my student was showing all of these scans about like how his brain changed, and it was so interesting because and this is typical me. I remember the football player's story, but I don't remember his name. Isn't that horrible? But the story was really good, and then also all the pictures showing you kind of like how his brain had like it looked like it almost like calcified because of the hits and stuff. So sometimes a good visual aid can do the trick too. Okay, so this is the kind of stuff you want to find in your articles. A lot of times that's where students get their AGBs from. Lay testimony. I'm not sure if any of you guys, for me, like watching this stuff on the news, when people upload, like, to me, there's a huge difference between when you watch something on the news, and like now that we have iPhones and stuff, you can see live recordings, right? So like when, for example, to me, it's like the news that we watch at 5:30 with Lester Holt or whoever you guys watch. It's mediated, so he gives you a trigger warning before you see any graphic images. Versus like when I was on like Twitter or TikTok earlier that day, they had this like literally, I'm pretty sure you guys saw the video. It's like where this bomb comes down a street in Ukraine, and like literally 1 second those people are there, and the next second they're not, right? And they show you the after effects. Well, there was no trigger warning. What about, you know what I mean? So like, there's a difference when we're on the street. How many of you guys have like been in a situation where you took started taping because something was going on? Have any of y'all ever been in that? No. Okay. I don't know what it is about my early college, high school students. They will be late to class because they're taking a fight. I'm like, if you're not in it, you need to be in class, right? So when that whole thing went on at Timberview last semester, I was actually in class with them, and they pulled out. I'm sorry, do I mention them too much? They pulled out their phone and they had videos of like what was going on in Timberview and the fight, and like I didn't get home until 5:30 that day, and the news had a very like sanitized, you know what I mean, version of it. So when we talk about like
I saw the
stats and
Minecraft
stuff
version
like
of
this,
it.
the news is choosing to like show us what they want to show us, quote unquote, versus in your news articles, you're doing the same thing. Like you have to interpret this stuff for us. Someone give me your topic so I can use your actual topic as an example.
The history on the use of tobacco.
Okay, well, I know a little bit about that. I need a topic I know nothing about. Somebody else?
History of it.
Anybody do anything tech or science? Say it again. Okay, that's really interesting. Tell me a little bit about it.
Space stations that rotate to increase gravity.
Okay,
Oh,
she's got to
shoot, I heard
choose
about
what
that.
to tell. I
I saw
love
that
that
Orbital
topic.
Children.
She's got to choose like what to tell us about because I don't have a background in that topic. See what I mean? So like I might like her focus because she's like narrowing this stuff down for me instead of me going to my phone and just Googling, right? So it's kind of like you guys are all mini reporters for us, and we're gonna get your perspective on your topic, okay? So, okay, figure out what you want to tell us about. Try to vary it up. Don't use all statistics. Don't tell all stories, because Augustus' stats might work for him, but like the quotations might work for Melina, right? So you want to vary up your evidence so you're catching different audience members. Okay, I'm gonna skip this. This is old. I need to update these examples. These are just photos. Okay, verbal citations. This is why I passed this out to you guys. We're gonna try some. I've got some in PowerPoint. Essentially, they say, I say it are stem sentences, right? So there was one on here I think is always funny. Introducing what they say. So like introducing standard views. Many Americans assume that boom, 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 and then I put in whatever my evidence is, right? Or if I wanted to throw in a however and then switch the direction of the sentence, I could do that too. Let's start off with the standard ones. These are the easy ones. So newspaper article. According to Kelly Donato, a reporter for USA Today, If it's somebody that your audience isn't gonna know, you need to tell us who they are, okay? And you'd be surprised, like, if it's a niche area, sometimes people won't know, right? So 2004 showed a big jump in the number of internet fraud cases. Elizabeth Graham, a communication researcher, found in a 2003 study that relationships go through several contradictory terms after a divorce. And then a web page. I like the date that it was last updated, not when you last accessed it, but when you updated it. Okay. So I think I have some examples. If you did in-text citations, y'all know what I'm talking about in English? Like if you wrote a formal research paper, you've done like in-text citations where you'll have the author, right, and the page date. When you do your verbal citations, all you're doing is in-text citations. You're doing parenthetical documentation. So it's just a different way of thinking about it, okay? So you've definitely done this before in your writing classes. We're just switching it from writing to verbal, okay? Here's a bunch of ones that I came up. I'm gonna leave these up as an example here in a second. The key to writing good verbal citations is one, paraphrase, 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 unless you're doing a quote. And then always mention like the author, the title, or the container. Choose one of these so that people can find it, or I can find it on your works cited. And then note the difference between verbal and written writing. So like when you're writing out in-text citations, they can be really long. So for verbal communication, remember, you're going to be saying this stuff, during the speech when you're nervous. So be careful about making it too complex, okay? So let me get to my example and we'll practice with one. Okay, so this is in an old version of MLA. Who's this? This is the
First.
author, right? Last name first, right? Bird by bird, some instructions on writing and life. So it was a book. Here's the publisher, and here's the year that it was published. So right here, I put some information that comes up in this site. Why don't you guys practice using one of the, and we can do this one together too. I want to practice using one of the stems from They Say, I Say with this source, okay? So let me try one and then you can try another one. Okay, so like on the first page, if I was going to use this stem, her argument that blank is supported by new research showing that blank. So here's what I would say. Her argument, or author Anne Lamont's argument, that jealousy stems from perfectionism is supported by new research showing that, perfectionism can drive many negative personality traits. Got how I did it? Right? Okay, you guys take this one, find anyone on any one of these pages and try to do it. Let's do one together, and then I'm gonna put up another example. Someone else try it?
I like using the same thing.
Using the same source, just a different sentence.
Do we have to use what's on here, or can we make up our own?
Use what's on here. Okay, anybody got one? Okay, try it out.
It's become common today to dismiss the struggles and the hardships people go through. However, Lamont's book kind of helps bring to life about trying to write more about the insecurity and failures that people go through, not as a way of bringing people down, but to reveal that these are a normal part of life and they shouldn't be ignored.
Okay, deal. That's a definite one. Okay, which one was that? Was that on page 1 or 2?
One
One.
at the towards the bottom, second from the bottom.
Second one from the bottom. Okay, I used to think that blank or the standard way of thinking about is another good one, for sure. Okay, there's a ton of ways you guys can do these. Let's do this one. So Herbert London, 5 Myths of the Television Age. Herbert London, the Dean of Journalism at New York University, explains how television contradicts boom, boom, boom. So let's see if we can take another one of these. Let's see. Okay, guys, this one's kind of difficult. Go to the page that has ways of responding, qualified agreement with the difference. It's kind of like how to agree with somebody, but not everything, you know, how to agree with the difference. Okay, so I'm gonna try to do that first one.
You said qualified agreement with the difference. Okay.
Okay, so the stem sentence, he claims that blank, and I have mixed feelings about it. On one hand, I agree that blank. On the other hand, I still insist that yada, yada, yada. So let me figure something out. Herbert London, Dean of Journalism at New York University, claims that seeing is believing, but I have mixed feelings about it. On one hand, I agree that a picture is worth 1,000 words. On the other hand, I still insist, that there are many myths about the television age. Did y'all see how I did that? So I took that stem sentence, he claims that blank, and I have mixed feelings about it. On one hand, I agree that blank. On the other hand, I still insist that blank. So Herbert London, Dean of Journalism at New York University, claims that seeing is believing, but I have mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, I agree that a picture is worth 1,000 words. On the other hand, I still insist that there are many myths about the television age. Okay? So, main thing, like there's a couple things verbal citations do for you. One is they establish your credibility. Hey, I did do some research for this speech. And I think, as far as your classmates go, we are like inherently, we believe you, right? We believe you. But I feel like as reporters, we have to include citations and research because that sets us apart, I think, from a lot of the bad discourse we're seeing. Like, there is a lot of bad discourse out there. Like, it used to be where you could watch a television show and people have, like, differing views, But I feel like because our discourse is so bad, we don't really see, for example, I was in a professional development, like all the educators for TCC on this campus were in this meeting, and we're an HSI, Hispanic Serving Institution. We get money from the government. And then we had a speaker come and speak, and people were disagreeing with what this guy was talking about, like teacher immediacy and like classroom management strategies, and people were disagreeing with him. Do you guys know on the chat feature, they were hitting the thumbs down and hitting the thumbs up? And, for us, like for me, I was a little bit surprised because like this is a professional conversation, right? I can disagree with you without, it becoming, to me, like it took away from the academic discourse and it made it a football, like let's hoot and holler and, versus like let's listen to a colleague. So I hope you guys are more like let's listen to a colleague, even if you guys disagree with each other, Okay, let's try one
It's not
more.
persuasive, it's informational. Right.
Actually, hey guys, I actually got all these sources from students. So these are actual like sources students like let me use from their speeches. So, I like to use student work so you kind of see what your peers did. So this speech was so good. It was about candy. Like students always write, they're like, oh, it has to be about business. But this was the best speech about candy. Like, what's y'all's favorite candy? I'll bring some in. What's y'all's favorite?
Snickers.
Snickers?
Nerds gummy clusters.
Nerds gummy clusters. I like the specificity. I really do. Over here, what do y'all like? Y'all
Yeah,
always like
well,
it.
it's like it made bite sized.
Okay.
You just pop them in.
They kind of stick together,
Stop
right?
thinking about it.
Stick together. Nerd vibes. Yeah. Okay, I'll bring some in. This speech, that's what he did for his attention getters. He brought the class to candy. And he just talked about like some of the history behind it. And this was something he had read, to get his speech going. Okay, somebody take this one. Do your own verbal citation. Do a simple one. It does not have to be difficult.
We'll do a qualified agreement with the difference.
No, nobody?
Just a searching.
Still searching?
I guess, as a result of my study, Steve Almond in his book, finds that Almond presents to solve history of the candy industry in the 20th century America.
You got it, yeah. I, don't take issue with that at all. So, for sure, I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to practice with the prompts, okay? To make sure that you weren't doing this at home for your speech for the first time by yourself, okay? So if you start out all of your verbal citations with according to yada, 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 that's okay for the informative. I will let you straight pass that for the informative. But for the persuasive, I want you guys to kick it up a notch and try some of the more difficult verbal citations, okay? And it adds to your credibility, helps you look super smooth while you're up here. If you can quote some of your sources, okay?
It probably just kind of makes sense to sort of like be informative, not to be that like complex. 'Cause, I don't know, I guess some of these seem to be more like
Biased.
persuasive.
That is a very intuitive point. If y'all look on the first sheet, the authors who wrote this, and they talk about like writing well means an entertaining conversation, summarizing others to set up one's own argument. And so that's essentially kind of the building blocks I'm trying to give you guys. So like consistently, whether it's in my class or other classes, you're gonna be asked to read, about topics and basically summarize and then be able to build your own arguments off of that. So for sure, it's definitely more applicable to persuasive speaking because, your credibility is hugely important in persuasive speaking. I actually had a student get up and lie like for an entire speech for his informative. He like literally got up and lied. And so part of the lie was that he was giving a speech about different parenting methods, and I was like, that is kind of odd, but then like his AGD was talking about, his daughter. So I was like, okay, well that makes sense. And so I don't know, fast forward to the end of the semester, I don't know how it came out, but they were, my class was chit-chatting before class, and they were like, you don't have a daughter? He was like, no, I don't really have a daughter. I was just looking for a speech topic last minute, and he was like, I didn't want people to think I was weird. But he kind of, he didn't make up the entire speech, but he made up that part of it. And we're like, do we know you at all at the end of 16 weeks?
Is your name even Harry?
Tell stories. So, but I do think,
Even a guy.
credibility is important. Try not to lie to your classmates, practice your skills. So, but I don't have it before.
Shut your face hole.
Okay, guys,
Parents are rough.
I have not talked a lot about delivery. I'm gonna start grading your delivery for the first time with this informative. So I do want to cover some basic do's and don'ts with you for your delivery. And then we need to go through and talk about PowerPoint too. So basic do's and don'ts. Here, let me freeze this for a second.
Good enough. Freaking get out of here. There's the door. Get out.
Sorry.
There's two doors. Freaking chairs. Get out. Get out. Go to school outside.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna grade your delivery this time, so let's go through some basic do's and don'ts, okay? It's not a huge part of your points, but you'll see on the rubric, it's like 6 different areas, so like,
Rubric?
on the fluent speech rubric, like the back part of it, the back page, half of that page is like delivery, so like your stance, eye contact, your volume, stuff like that. Basic don'ts, make sure not to lean on the podium, don't lean on the podium. So, most of you guys are not using note cards, it is speaker's preference in here, so do whatever works for you. For me, like, I like having note cards, I'm like Linus in a blanket when it comes to my note cards. But, I have a friend that I present with, and note cards trip him up, so if you are using note cards, remember to use them correctly. Remember to use PowerPoint correctly. So like if you're using a note card, make sure they're waist level and they're not up here. She's holding them way too high, okay? Make sure if you look at your visual aid, it's fine if you want to look at it and talk, right? But at some point, make sure to turn back around and face your audience, okay? You're going to notice the delivery is a huge part of the rubric, but it's only like 20 points. So don't freak out, but realize that there are some basic stuff I'm looking for now. Okay, be aware of your nervous movements. Everybody has them. They're the things that comedians make fun of, like when comedians are so good at like picking up on people's adapters and stuff. When Tina Fey did Sarah Palin, she would always do the hair, that thing that Sarah Palin would do. Whatever your nervous habits are, please be aware of them. So whether it's rubbing your chin or flicking hair or even clicking your note cards. There's people who come up here and they'll click their note cards the whole time. Just be aware of whatever your nervous habits are. And if you move a lot, don't try not to move. It's okay to move. Just try not to make it constant. Okay? Y'all see the difference? Okay, hands in your pockets, that sort of thing, it's too informal. We're gonna push for formal presentations in here. Make sure you're standing up straight. Hands in your pockets is just too informal, okay? I don't require you guys to dress up this semester. I don't know, post-COVID, I'm like, dressing up just sounds so like, it sounds like so much, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I still want formal presentations, watch your stance. This is I call this side saddle. It's like all your weight's on one leg. You want to make sure to stand up straight. Make eye contact, even though she's not technically making eye contact. You want to make sure to look at your audience. And which we did have not to talk about this, but we did have a lot of speeches like this. Technically, you always want to keep your body stance open to your audience. Okay. Use visual aids effectively. Make sure, check out the clicker before you present, that sort of thing, so that it's all smooth for you when we come back. These are two of the biggest things that seem to trip people up when they get nervous. How many of you guys talk faster when you get nervous? Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a natural thing that most people do. So breathe deep. It'll slow you down. it'll slow the rate. And when I get nervous, I have a tendency to talk fast too. So if you just remember to breathe deeply, it'll slow your rate down, which will also help you not get so many verbal fillers. Make sure you've got an effective AGD. How many of you guys have an AGD for your speech already? Crickets. Okay, make sure you've got one of those AGDs that we talked about, okay? People always remember, like, we cling to first impressions. So audiences decide in the first 5 seconds or not if they're gonna listen to you. 5 seconds, that's all you get. So you wanna make sure you spend that time wisely. A lot of times people will forgive things too, so your entire speech can be like mayhem. And if you get down to that conclusion and you can sum it up nice, right? Always, when I coach speech and debate, I would always tell my debaters, make sure when you get to that rebuttal, you give them their 4 voters, right? You crystallize the debate for them. Don't forget your conclusion. Remember strong grammar and articulation. And then over spring break, this is why I want you guys to get your paperwork done before we go. Please take a moment and practice your delivery. Just run through it, a couple of times before you come to class. Okay, look confident and prepared, and then of course be dynamic. What else? Okay, questions about delivery. Questions? Because this is like step 1 of delivery. This will be the first time that I'm gonna grade your delivery like straight out on the rubric, but the bulk of your points will actually come. That's why I'm gonna pre-grade all this stuff over spring break, because the bulk of your points actually come from your outline and your works cited. So your delivery isn't weighted as much for this first one. Question?
So the things that we need to turn in like by this Sunday are on Canvas.
Mhm.
So it doesn't necessarily mean we need to turn in a rough draft or a rough outline and a formal outline.
No, I was just seeing where you guys were at.
Okay.
With the hot or not. I just wanted to check on you guys to see, what you were working on. In college, you guys are all self-paced or whatever, but my other classes are not. They turned in, like, they had to turn in their topics. They had to turn in, So, but you guys are self-paced, so I'm assuming you're doing, I just got finished looking at their rough drafts last week, so. Yeah, and I'm happy to do that with any of you guys who wants to do that, but that for me, for you guys, is more office hours and stuff like that, or an email if you need help. Okay, and you guys don't seem to be texting. Did I mention that I text? No.
Oh,
You guys can text me. I actually prefer it. Here, let me write up my number. Did I not tell you all that? I thought I put it on the syllabus. Normally I mention it the first day. Some people think it's weird to text professors. I feel like it's just like, like it's just easier. This is how people communicate.
I don't know. I like doing email better.
And please don't have my husband looking at me crazy, texting me at 3 a.m. Most times I'll put it on mute, but sometimes I forget. It's 469-333-0041. Pretty much when I'm not in class. I mean, some students still email me because that's what they prefer. So just do what works for you. So over COVID, it was just easier to text students. Okay, so basic delivery, guys, we did not have time to talk about this today, but I do want to point it out to you on our Canvas page. It's PowerPoint. Oh, sorry. PowerPoint guidelines. Because this is like the basic, like, PowerPoint guidelines that you guys have probably heard before. I may not need to cover it.
Are you grading off creativity?
Well, yes and no. I am grading off of design. So like if your slides are black and white, like, just basic.
Generic, plain.
Right. Like, but if, some people do black and white and it's a whole aesthetic on their slides, so it just kind of depends on how it looks. Make sure that, you don't have like font that's difficult to read or it just does the basics. A lot of times people will like have way too much text. That's what I see a lot of. Make sure you're using keywords and phrases on your PowerPoint. I put some other ones up here outside of PowerPoint. There's eMaze, Powtoons, Prezi. There's a bunch of different platforms. Backgrounds. Make sure just to keep your slides balanced, Don't have like large holes on your slides. So on the whole, like y'all's first, like your slides that you guys did for your businesses look good. There were like a couple slides that I thought were worthy, but on the whole, I felt like our PowerPoint for that first speech was good.
So, preferably speaking, though,
Mhm.
you would like us to only do like words and small phrases.
Keywords and phrases unless it's a quote.
Okay.
Yeah, I would rather you guys not have like, a full paragraph on your,
But if we are doing a quote, we can do like the whole.
quote.
Okay, yeah, and citing it just like we were doing it like in a paper.
You got it.
Okay.
You got it. And guys, your speeches are gonna run through that plagiarism app or whatever. If it pops up 0, that's a red flag because you're supposed to have verbal citations. So if it pops up 0, did you cite? Did you, So everybody should get a certain percentage of plagiarism. It gives you that percentage. You know what I'm talking about when you turn in stuff? Okay. So everybody should get at least something, especially if you're doing direct quotes, But it's that like, don't worry about that unless it's like, 100% or 90%. And that's when,
Gee,
cut
how did you get
somewhere,
101%?
Right.
I have a friend who got 120% on that one time.
No, let me do a separate link right now.
0.01%.
Remember that time I No. Yeah, me too.
You accidentally copy and paste a whole expression in the page.
How does that happen?
Hey, I'm gonna call it
120.
visual aid because saying PowerPoint means you have to use PowerPoint. And, you guys might want to use some other things. So I'm just gonna say visual aid. And I'm gonna put it right under the informative.
You're a builder. I got visual aid. I don't know, it's like an expensive drying rack. What the hell is a dishwasher? I don't know, it's like an expensive drying rack. That is for real what we use in my household. We don't use it like that, we just use it to dry shit.
That's so crazy. It's almost
Okay, there we go. So you'll turn in your outline and works cited should be a Word document or a Google Doc, all in one thing. Of course, your works cited goes on a different page. Don't forget to put your verbal citations on your works cited. And then your informative speech visual aid, it can be PowerPoint, it can be, whatever, but there's a separate link for it.
We have to list our verbal citations separately in the same document we use to list our works cited.
And you can put it on the works cited page.
Is Okay.
And it's just a safeguard for you guys. One, I wanna see how you structured them. And then worst case scenario, if you get up here and get nervous and you forget one, or one doesn't necessarily come out the way you want it, it's on your works cited page. I knew what the plan was, you know? Uh-huh.
Is a certain amount of quotes we need to fulfill for the
Three.
rubric?
Three.
Wait.
3 verbal citations during your speech. And make sure to spread them out. Don't put them all in one main point or all in the conclusion. Every now and then that happens. Okay, it sounds like you guys are working. Thursday is for the e-portfolio. If you turn that stuff in before class, enjoy your spring break. You don't have to come. If you want to work with me in class, I'll show you how I put mine together, and we can work together on getting your portfolio set up. If you have any questions about your informative, you want me to take a look at your outline, anything like that, we can do that in the computer lab too. Okay. So I hope you guys are, looking forward to spring break. Thank you so much for all your hard work and being here so early. Please,
You know.
you can
most
take
of the
those
time.
with you. You can use them for your speech, and then leave your cards on